What's up, my loves? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Jay, and guys, today I'm bringing some spooky stuff to ya because today we're gonna talk about the horror movies that I've watched recently. Now, it is true to form that literally months and months away from October, I'm already wishing that it was fall, that it was October, that it was Spooktober, that it was time for Halloween. Guys, and also, if the light changes, I'm so sorry. The clouds outside are doing something funky, and I can't control the weather. So I have a lineup of 6 amazing movies. One or two might not be as amazing, but I'll tell you why. 6 amazing movies to talk about with you today. And the first one that I have to bring up is Dr. Sleep, directed by Mike Flanagan. Guys, I am a giant fan of Mike Flanagan. Literally everything he's produced, I just mind blowing, am I right? So first you've got Krampus, you've got Trick or Treat, you've got that series, Haunting of Hill House, and now you've got Dr. Sleep, guys. I even loved Godzilla, but Dr. Sleep is basically the film adaptation of Stephen King's book, Dr. Sleep. And it follows Danny after his trials and tribulations at the Overlook Hotel that takes place in the first book/movie, The Shining. So, of course, our protagonist is Danny, and he's much older now. He's looking like a middle-aged man. He's been through a lot. He's been through a lot of trauma. And basically, this movie is about him trying to make a fresh start after everything he's been to, after all of the substance abuse he's been through. And somehow he just finds himself right back in it, smack dab in the middle of a psychic controversy. He meets a new friend named Abra, a young girl, and they end up getting entangled with this sort of group called the Knot, and they are basically like psychic vampires where they seek out people with the Shining, the psychic ability that both Danny and Abra have, and they sort of suck the life force out of them. Guys, this movie is phenomenal for so many reasons. It is a solid 5 out of 5 stars for me. So one of the reasons that it's 5 out of 5 stars is hello, Mike Flanagan. He just puts his effortless, amazing touches on every bit of this movie. And you know what's really great too about this movie is that you can obviously see that Stephen King is in his element with this plot. Now, if you're familiar with Stephen King, you know that his strong suit is psychic abilities. He loves sort of exploring psychic abilities with Firestarter, Carrie, gosh, there's so many other movies. It even has psychic abilities in there, especially The Shining. That's what The Shining is about. Whew. Guys, I tried so hard to look cute for you, but listen, my hair has to go up. In this quarantine that we're in, I can't get my hair cut and it's just so long. Anyway, back to the movie. So, my favorite part of this movie, or rather my favorite parts of this movie is, like I said, Stephen King's sort of affinity for exploring psychic abilities. And also I love the villain, Rose the Hat. First of all, she's a hot mama. I could not take my eyes off of her the whole movie. And also she just has just the best character. She's so devious. She's so smart and such a strong psychic, but also, you know, part of you sort of sympathizes with her. She's the leader of the group, the Knot, the group of psychic vampires, basically. And she just, it's very obvious that she cares about her group. And it's so strange because she's a heartless sort of person. She preys on children and unsuspecting adults and just, you know, she doesn't discriminate when it comes to feeding what she needs. But at the same time, she's just such a complex character. Another part that I really loved about this movie was their depictions of psychic travel and just like the sort of deepening of how these characters use their psychic ability, if that makes sense. Like in The Shining, it was very minimal. In Dr. Sleep, you can just sort of really tell that Danny is just used to his powers. He knows how to take advantage of everything that he has within himself. And same with Rose the Hat. She's a powerful psychic and you sort of get to explore what the depths of those psychic abilities are for our main characters. I just loved every second about this movie. And also, this is probably one of Ewan McGregor's best performances. I have loved him as an actor for a very long time, and he just, first of all, he's hot. He's still really hot, but also he has quite a range, and it's very obvious with this movie how broad that range is. He just plays a much softer, sort of understated character, and because his character as Danny has so many traumas in his past and continuing traumas, it's just all the more evident that Ewan McGregor took the time to research his character and really play it through. The next movie that I want to talk about is The Innkeepers, directed by Ty West. Guys, I love Ty West. I loved him when I saw House of the Devil, such a great movie, and I knew I had to seek out his other movies, such as The Innkeepers. Now, I'm going to give this movie a 4 out of 5 stars. Now, this movie is not for someone who's here for the jump scares, the fast pace, the cheap thrills type of thing. This movie is really for people who appreciate character development, atmospheric dread, intentional scenery, that sort of thing. This is sort of like, if you're thinking like Insidious is very attainable for people who don't watch a lot of horror, Innkeepers is sort of that intermediate level. You have to have a real thorough appreciation for horror to sort of understand this movie and why it's such a hit. And you know, I don't say that in sort of a sense of alienating anyone who might want to watch this movie. I think that this movie is great for so many reasons, specifically because it is slow burn. You follow the two main characters, Claire and Luke. They are sort of the front desk attendants of a hotel that's about to go out of business. So it's their last weekend at this hotel, and this hotel has a story behind it. They have a little ghost story about a woman named Madeline O'Malley who supposedly hung herself the day of her wedding because her fiance just abandoned her. And so now she haunts the hotel looking for her lover. And so as the movie progresses, just the dread intensifies and the characters really sort of age and ripen like a fine wine. And the terror is real, especially at the very end. Things just sort of hit a climax that you're not ready for. And you know what's strange about this movie is that there are little jump scares, there are sightings of ghosts, etc., but it's at a minimum. A lot of this movie depends on the built-up atmospheric dread as time progresses. And personally, I rather enjoy that, and I think if you're willing to invest a little bit of time to get that payoff, I think this is a good movie for you. Now, the next movie I want to talk about is a little unorthodox, mostly because a lot of people have seen it, it's won awards, and no one, I think, would consider it straight horror, but I'm going to include it because it is horror adjacent. And that movie is Parasite, directed by Bong Joon-ho. I think I said that right. I don't know, probably not. Anyway, I saw this recently, and it is an Oscar-winning film, and that's so exciting because it's a foreign film. And you know what? It was phenomenal for so many reasons, but why I want to include it in this list is because I do think it's horror adjacent. So if you don't know what Parasite is about, it follows the parallel lives of the Park family and the Kim family. Now, the Park family is a super upper class, upper crust kind of family, very rich, and then the Kim family is definitely more poverty stricken. They live in a basement. They're really struggling to find work. Both parents are out of work. They're really just, what they're doing for work right now, I think, is like folding pizza boxes, so that can't bring in much money. And how the movie sets off is that the son in the Kim family gets a recommendation from his friend to work as an English tutor for the Park family. And slowly things develop from there. The movie starts off a little confusing, especially if you're not into subtitles. I watched this with my boyfriend, and he's not super into subtitles, and it was hard for him to get into it to settle in right away. But then around the middle, things really pop off. I won't spoil too much of this movie because it's a very intricate plot and I don't want to give anything away, but let me just say that there are some solid horror elements here. For example, there is a story about a ghost sighting, but the way they sort of like tell that story is very horror-esque, and who it ends up being is very horror-esque. The twist, I really think is very horror-esque in the sense that, you know, there's a lot of like, I would say there's a lot of dread for the future implications of all the actions of the characters in this story. Like every step that they take is just digging themselves further into this hole that they may never climb out of. And if you've seen it, that's almost a literal description. Yeah. You might not agree with me in saying that this is horror adjacent, but I think if you take another look at it, you would see what I'm talking about. I remember finishing that movie and just sitting after the movie thinking, wow, it just unsettled me so much to think about like the future implications of everything that happened in that movie. Like if those were real people, they'd be fucked. I mean, just to put it plainly. So this movie is a 5 out of 5 stars for me. Now, the next movie is the one dud in this list, but I wanted to include it just to sort of have a discussion over it, and because it is a horror movie that I watched recently, and that's what this list is about. And this movie is Ma, directed by Tate Taylor and starring Octavia Spencer. Now, I had a lot of high hopes for this movie. It looked great. I love Octavia Spencer so much, but it sort of fell flat. And I'm gonna tell you right now that this is a 2.5 out of 5 stars for me. It's set up really well. It's basically about a middle-aged woman who ends up sort of befriending these teenagers. She buys them alcohol and then their relationship sort of evolves from there, and she ends up sort of inviting them back to her basement as like the cool hangout place. And turns out that her ulterior motives are more insidious than just having a good time with these underage drinkers. And she has a whole backstory, a whole history that it just sort of evolves throughout the movie. And my biggest complaint with it is that it was good up until she got to the part where she was taking her revenge, and it sort of just fell flat. If I was a horror movie villain, my revenge that I would be exacting would be so much worse, so much bloodier, so much crazier. But she was just, meh, I don't know. And that's crazy to say. I'm not a murderer. But I don't know. It just didn't quite climax the way I wanted to, and it all sort of fell flat at the end. So the next movie I want to talk about is a rewatch for me, but I had to mention it because I just truly forgot how amazing it is, and I feel like it's probably been talked about a lot when it first came out, but I think it still needs to be talked about. And that is Cabin in the Woods, directed by Joss Whedon. Now, if you've never seen Cabin in the Woods and you love horror, this is the movie for you. If you've been watching horror for a long time, you love horror as a genre, this is a movie that pays witty, funny, sarcastic, excellent homage to the genre of horror, done in Joss Whedon style. And if you're not familiar with Joss Whedon, he's done stuff like the first Avengers movie, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Firefly. He is a literal god, okay? But if you're not familiar with Cabin in the Woods, it basically follows a group of teenagers who decide to have a weekend getaway in the woods at a cabin. And so from there, you know, they sort of stumble upon a basement in the cabin and they come upon some artifacts, and it sort of sets off this whole chain of events. And as you're going through the movie, you realize that there are like players behind the scene. And so what it basically ends up being is that in the movie, we're all living in this sort of horror movie universe where in order to appease old gods, sacrifices of young people have to be made constantly, and so they're sort of put into these horror scenes. Now that sounds confusing, but if you watch it, you'll know what I'm talking about. And this is a solid 5 out of 5 stars because it brings up every single trope in horror movies that we know and love. The dumb teenager, the slutty teenager, the if you have sex you will die trope, the cabin in the woods trope, the serial killer slasher tropes, the zombie tropes. It's just all there. And also, can I say, I appreciate the character of the smart stoner kids so freaking much. Not enough people listen to stoner kids. I just absolutely love everything about this movie, so solid 5 out of 5 stars. Now the last movie, and it's not a movie, it's a series, but the last series that I want to talk about is American Horror Story Roanoke. Now I know I'm late. I know it's been a few years since this season came out, but I just watched it recently, and guys, I binged the hell out of this series. Like, I've always loved American Horror Story, but they sort of lost me around the Carney season and the hotel season. I don't know why the hotel season didn't quite click with me, but I loved the first 3 seasons. And then I just sort of lost track. But American Horror Story Roanoke, everything that I love. So one of the cool things about this season is that it has a certain format. It's basically like taking the format of one of those true crime documentaries. So they're interviewing the real people in the episodes, and then they have these dramatic reenactments. And you know, they have the whole cast again, of course, true to American Horror Story form. And so basically what the story is about is this couple moves to rural North Carolina to a big house. They get an amazingly cheap price for this giant house, which we all know if you get something at a ridiculously cheap price, it's bad. Don't do it. It's bad news. But of course they move in and things start to happen. They find out that there is a woman named the Butcher. Her and her motley crew of ghosts sort of haunt the land / protect the land, and anyone who moves onto the land, well, they're killed. So, you know, they're dealing with that. And then halfway through the season, as they wrap up like the show in this season, they decide to have a reunion with all the cast members and the real life people, and craziness ensues. Guys, when I thought the season was over, it was not over, and things just got crazier and crazier. And one of the other reasons I love this particular American Horror Story season is because it feels very much like historical fiction, horror historical fiction, which I love. I love the setting of like the colonial settlers. It's one of my favorite eras in history, and just the fact that it touches on, you know, that old sort of unsolved mystery of the settlers of Roanoke. So mind-blowingly excellent. If you have not seen this season of American Horror Story, y'all are missing out. I don't know what to tell you. Like, it just blew my mind. It was so, so good. And let me tell you something. Kathy Bates is a national effing treasure. She just gets better with every American Horror Story season that she's in. And then anything else that I see her in, she's got my heart and soul, y'all. She's just a cute little old lady treasure who loves some spooks and scares, and I'm into it. She is role model, goals, yes. All right, guys. That is my list, my recent horror movies that I watch, horror series that I watched. So if you're into it, let me know down below if you've seen any of these movies, what you thought, what were your ratings, your personal ratings on any of these, and let me know if I need to watch any movies that I haven't listed. Let me know in the comments down below. And also, if you're into this, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you always know when I've got spooky things coming to you. Bye, y'all.